In this film I'm going to perform Lagrima by Tarrega. It's one of the first romantic pieces that many classical guitarists play, and I think it's a good idea if you're an intermediate player to revisit it, and with some of the tips I'm going to give you, see if you can elevate it to another level. Okay, so the first thing to talk about throughout this piece is balance between the voices, because as is often the case, you've got a bass, a melody and mid-range accompaniment. So it's good to keep the melody nice and loud, the bass pretty loud and the accompaniment down. So we hear this in the first opening. So I'm keeping those B's really down. Something to practice there. The rest strokes as well are something that you might want to consider if you haven't before. I'm playing that melody with rest strokes, resting on the string, but the problem is getting it at the same time as the basses and not splitting them like this, because that's okay for some of the time, but it would start to become irritating after a while. It's one of those things, if you keep hearing it, you can't unhear it anymore. So work on those rest strokes playing at the same time as the bass notes, and then keep that B string down. I'll talk about balance a little bit more throughout this throughout the piece. Something to bear in mind is string squeak here. If you just lift as you go up, just lift, but keep the fourth finger down, and you avoid those noises. So that's something else, another little improvement that you can make. Now musically there's an identical phrase. So I like to play the first one and then a little echo there. Now this next section is interesting because is it accompaniment or is it melody? Well, that I think is accompaniment, and then that's more like melody, I feel. So this is a lovely campanella bit here because I've got the third finger on the fourth string, C sharp, fourth on the F sharp on the G, I've got the second on the A, on the B, but I'm also using the open E. So they're all ringing on those strings. So don't do this. Make it ring on, campanella style. And now I don't play the next bit here. I play it down in 4th position barre, and I'm also using the 3rd on the E there, so I've got the 2nd ready to get onto the A sharp here. So 2nd's free. Okay, so that whole passage. Now musically, you hear some people with the glissando, that's sort of Segovia kind of mid 20th century kind of style, but I tend to, I do that the very last time it's played, but I tend to just pause on the C sharp like that. I just like the shape of that more than okay. So that's the shape of that melody. Now this bit here, I like to leave these two, this little chord ringing, and then put the B underneath it, because you get a lovely clash. And then you've got the A sharp going to an A natural. Now you might want to decide whether you're going to spread that last chord of that phrase. Easier to control the spread. Then you've got the repeat. You might want a little pause that time on the top note. And here, use the open B and slide the 4th. Slide the 3rd. So the minor section, I've seen some editions with the G in this chord, and mine edition that I'm using only has 3 notes, but either or, I don't think, yeah, I think some people play it one way and some people play it the other. Now notice the line, that slide, very romantic. Now a bit of vibrato on the top, and you get a better vibrato if you've got both fingers down, and then it makes the slur easier as well. Now spread that chord. Now balance again here. There's your melody. Then you've got underneath it. So listen to that balance again. And then the melody jumps out again. I'm using a free stroke on the very top one, because that chord can then ring on underneath it. If you use a rest stroke, it will cut off the B. But then rest strokes here. Now the balance here is very important as well. So that should be a lot lower than so the melody is, and then you've got this little figure underneath it. repeat. Vibrato and pause there, a little fermata, and catch it up. That's what the rubato is all about. So notice I'm using 1 and 4. I just find that easier to control, and again the strings squeak. I leave a little pause there, just a little too long, and I think that sometimes silence says an awful lot. That's quite dramatic if you do that. So I don't do a lot different here. I do apologise for my squeaky chair, but yeah, that maybe a bit of that. Too good to resist, isn't it? And a big roll. And a definite cut at the end. Don't just, make sure 3 and cut. I always like that definite ending there. So I hope that's given you some ideas. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification if you want to watch more of these, and do send in more ideas. Thanks very much.